Another key aim of UKALTA is to strengthen or build relationships with peer organisations who have an interest in language testing and assessment in the UK and beyond. So it's a great pleasure this afternoon to have representatives from the British Association of Applied Linguistics, Testing and Evaluation, come on Mark, help me out. Testing, Evaluation and Assessment, SIG, and Fiona Orel from BALEAP, the British Association of Lecturers for English in Academic Purposes, Testing, Assessment and Feedback SIG, together with our own Benny Kremmel from UKALTA, as panelists on discussion panel this afternoon, to be moderated by Judith Mader from IATEFL, which brings a really lovely international perspective as well. And the panelists are going to be addressing questions which were invited from the field, as well as some issues that are on their own hearts and minds, particularly from the experience of this year, not just to look back and complain, but to look forward and think perhaps how we can take what we've learned from this year into the future for the benefit of all. So over to Judith.
Thank you very much, Linda, and thank you very much as well, Claire and James, for a really interesting plenary session, and welcome to this panel discussion. Linda said quite a bit about what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be looking at the issues that various associations have faced as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, and the way forward for each of us individually and possibly together. It's a question and answer session. My main role is to moderate the session. I'm not going to say anything about the panelists at this point because each of them is going to give a very brief introduction, and you've got our biodata in the program. I'm based in Frankfurt, Germany. I've been there for a very long time, and have been involved with IATEFL for about, well, I've been a member for the last 40 years and been involved more closely with testing, evaluation and assessment and the SIG for the last 15 years or so. And I'm now a trustee of IATEFL and have been for the last 3 years. So I will be answering a few of the questions briefly, but basically it's up to the three.
If ever there were a perfect time for video to freeze. Sorry, Judith, you just froze for about 10 seconds there.
10 seconds. The last thing I said was Nikki is going to be taking the questions that come up during the session from the Q&A box, right, Nikki? So don't forget to put your questions in there rather than in the chat, where she'd have to pick them out from the mass of other things. Okay, so we haven't got a lot of time, so we're going to move on quickly. And I'm just going to ask the three panelists and Nikki perhaps to say a few words about themselves before we move on to the first question. I'd like to start with Mark.
Thanks, Judith. So if you came to the BAAL TEASIG conference earlier on in September, I apologize, you are now seeing my face again. I'm trying to get everywhere. I am the communications officer for BAAL TEASIG and temporarily stepping in as the convener for it as well. And I work as a consultant for multiple language testing and professional organizations. So my perspective is partly on the academic side and partly on the professional and commercial side. Benny?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Ben?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Benjamin Kremmel, based at the University of Innsbruck in Austria. I'm here to represent UKALTA on this panel, the UK Association of Language Testing and Assessment. I don't think the organization itself needs much introduction because you are at its event. I'm not currently on the board of UKALTA, but I used to be when it was founded in 2015 at an LTF in Oxford, actually. And I am sort of also representing, I think, a good chunk of the membership in being a UKALTA expat member, so no longer based in the UK, but still very much involved with colleagues from there.
Right, thank you, Ben. And Fiona?
Yes, hello. Well, first of all, many thanks to UKALTA for inviting our brand new SIG to today, so that's at the start of the 40th anniversary celebration. It's great for us to be here. So my name is Fiona Orel. I'm the Director of Assessment for the International Study and Language Institute at the University of Reading, and I'm the convener for the BALEAP Testing Assessment and Feedback SIG, TAFSIG. So last year BALEAP put out a call for new SIGs, and we were one of the SIGs that were convened. So our foundation has coincided really with everything that's changed and happened this year.
Right.
Okay, it looks as though Judith has frozen again temporarily. Oh no, hello Judith.
Hello Nikki, I could hear you.
You froze for a moment, so I was just about to go on and briefly introduce myself.
Yes, do.
My name's Nicola Latimer, and I work at CRELA Research Institute at the University of Bedfordshire, and I'm also on the committee of BAAL TEASIG. And my job here today is just to keep an eye on your questions, any questions that you have for the panelists. If you post them in the question and answer section, and I'll keep an eye on them, and I will pose as many as I can to the panelists in as much time as we have available at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. Okay, we're going to move straight on to the first question, which is actually one for everybody. What issues are our respective associations facing as a result of the global pandemic? And just very briefly about IATEFL, it's only one sentence. Our biggest issue was the deferral of the 2020 conference to 2021 and the moving of it from Manchester to Harrogate, which caused the largest impact on IATEFL as a teachers association. And I'd like to ask Fiona to answer this question first, because the teachers seems to be, teachers and lecturers seems to be the link. So Fiona.
Yes, thanks Judith. Yes, it's been a little bit different for us because it wasn't changing, it was trying to become established and create our network and community from online from the beginning with you know, activities that you normally expect to be able to do, at least to start with, to some degree in a face-to-face environment, but we're straight away everything online from the word go. So that was a very steep learning curve, as we've said so many times this year for us. And we had to consider really how best to serve our membership. We would have done that anyway, but it was so much more heightened that there were people were struggling with the change, learning and teaching, but also assessing online. And we'd founded the SIG with the aim of helping experts in English for academic purposes to connect over issues to do with in-sessional and pre-sessional tests. And one of the many areas within that was exploring online testing, but that was turned on its head. And that became all that we were trying to help the membership and community to deal with the challenges of testing online, because for pre-sessionals especially, they're often high stakes assessment for university entry. So you've got all of the stakeholders involved with that, including the receiving faculties, the UKVI, the students themselves. So I think people were feeling incredible pressure, and we felt that we really wanted to help support the community through that. So that became the overriding focus for us throughout the year, really. We had our very first event in March, which was in response to a lot of questions that people were asking about testing and online tests. Very new SIG, very new to online technology. It wasn't as smooth as we might have liked, or as it might have been face-to-face, but it was that was the start off for us with supporting the community. And I think that's a challenge that we need to, or an issue that we can get better with, is how better to use the online technologies and platforms to engage with the community and support them.
Okay, I think
yeah, sorry, thank you very much, Fiona. I think we probably all agree that the most difficult thing is starting something online. It's easier to continue something that has already existed face-to-face, whatever it is, rather than doing something online. So you maybe had the most difficult task, I don't know, but I'd like to move on now to, who did I have next? Ben. And the issues that you...
So the issues for UKALTA, I think the immediate effects or short term, there have not been too many issues for UKALTA this year, obviously with the exception of us not being able to meet at Lancaster for the LTF celebrations and some other events not being able to go ahead as planned, maybe some initiatives, individual initiatives being put on hold for the time being, but other initiatives have actually gone on regardless, such as nominations for the ref panels and the development of the UKALTA website and all that, all those aspects. So I think the finances are okay, partly because there's no membership fee, I guess. The memberships is okay because there's no fee, and also partly I think because of Linda's President's Pilgrimage fundraising event, the finances are looking okay. And I think the effects of the pandemic, UKALTA might feel more long-term than short-term, because it's very difficult to say how UK academia in the world of language testing and assessment is going to develop in light of it, and how it's going to affect all of the assessment professionals as well who are involved with test providers.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. So Mark, your turn.
Very similar to UKALTA in the sense that we're not a fee-paying organisation. So unfortunately, when we had to postpone our conference in March, we were not so financially invested in the conference that we lost any money out of it. So that was great. So we're all okay. But I think one of the biggest issues that we faced, aside from the uncertainty of when will this end, will we be able to delay a face-to-face conference, or do we have to now commit to doing an online alternative? It was the threat to community, the idea of preserving the community and the exchange of ideas. And BAAL TEASIG had already set out, we'd made a decision to try to grow the organization as well. Well, you have an existential threat when you say you can have no more conferences and we don't know how long for. What do you do to maintain the sense of community, and how do you grow your organization, which had been our plan? So the biggest issue for us was when we decided to make the commitment to an online conference. And then, as I'm sure many people have seen, how do you run an online conference? Watching other people running online conferences, is there anything you can learn from it? Resigning yourself to the fact that there will be some issues, but begging people's patience and tolerance in this rather unusual set of circumstances. And actually, it's come out okay. I think we have managed to maintain community. We have managed to maintain an exchange of ideas, although it's not the same as it was. But there have been some positives to have come out of it as well.
Yeah, and that leads actually very nicely, Mark, thank you, into the next thing that we want to talk about. And at this point, I'd just like to say that we received several questions, and after some discussion, we decided that we would group them into areas because there were overlaps and they were about some of the same things. And so it's quite natural to talk about the challenges that we're faced with by this crisis, I think everywhere in our own lives and in our professional and in the association's lives. But there are also, I would hope anyway, opportunities, which is what Mark has just touched on. So maybe we could just move on to that and talk about the opportunities that there are and the changes, the positive changes that may come about through the crisis. And yeah, maybe I can ask Ben to start with this one.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So I think one of the challenges is sort of this access to community, as Mark has said. But one of the opportunities is there's also the digital realm opens up a lot of opportunities for community building in some way, and we're only at the beginning really of exploring those and exploring the tools and approaches that we could take for that, because in a way what it has brought with it is a tremendous reach. I mean, I see now is 191 participants at LTF, so this is the biggest, if we consider it an LTF, but it's the biggest I think UKALTA event that we've ever had, and people are joining from all over the world. So in a way, access to content is easier than ever. There's plenty of recordings, webinars, and online events, but access to community might be the one that's more difficult to establish. And yeah, there are ways, but we're only at the beginning of exploring that. And if we do, then there's lots of, because of this access to content, there's also a great opportunity, I think, for collaboration, because usually somebody can maybe only go to a few events a year and only has to sort of cherry pick which testing conference they go to. But now it's perfectly feasible to attend BALEAP events, to attend BAAL TEASIG and LTF and lots of other events from different organizations. So I think those are great opportunities that we should actually follow up on.
Yeah, and that actually leads nicely into what we might come to later if we have time, the sort of cross-fertilization of the different associations, because everyone can go to everyone's events. So that's really nice. Fiona, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, no, I think broadly, I agree with what Mark and Benjamin are saying. You know, I miss the energy, I think, sometimes of the face-to-face events and the little conversations that can pop up there and can lead to all kinds of things. And it's really difficult to do that online without it being obviously engineered. It doesn't quite work in the same way, I don't think. So I miss that. But on the other hand, I think we've reached a wider network, and we're able to reach a wider network both in the UK and overseas. Access to colleagues, access to content that we wouldn't otherwise have had without the costs of travel and everything else. And I think in some ways having this, it's been a difficult year, but we've had this shared sense of purpose as we're all suddenly dealing with one overriding issue. We've all got our separate individual specialist fields, but then we've all got this one big overriding issue that's bringing us together with a shared sense of purpose. How best do we deal with this? And I think collectively across institutions and associations, we really want to work on that. So I think that is an opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fiona. I'd just like to add that in IATEFL, there's been an enormous amount of creativity in the ideas that people have come up with, the active volunteers have come up with, to replace or emulate the sense of community which is missing, and all the different things that can be done online, and that's been absolutely amazing. I'd like to, before we come to the questions in the box to Nikki, I'd just like to move on and ask Mark, what developments do you see post-COVID, if whenever that is? And the uncertainty is obviously one of the issues we're all faced with, but how do you think things will be after that? Will we all go back to the way we were before?
Well, I would say most definitely not. I mean, to echo the sentiment that's gone on before, what we've seen out of this is the democratization of access to ideas. And I don't think that genie is going back into the box. What COVID has been is the spark that's lit the fire for online conversations and the online dissemination of ideas. And that is not going to go away. Certainly from BAAL TEASIG's point of view, we bought a Zoom license. We're not going to just use it once. We're going to keep on using this license. We're invested in the process now. So we plan to keep on keeping the online presence going. So it's the good thing that's come out of it. We're going to be doing webinars. We're going to be doing a lot more online content as single one-off talks, but in no way will this ever replace face-to-face conferences. We do also need to have the community, the side conversations that happen at conferences. How important are they? We will maintain our face-to-face conference presence as soon as we can, but we'll absolutely build up our online presence and try to get the community, the online community and face-to-face community as a larger community. It's such an opportunity. We never saw it coming, but it's such an opportunity. We can't miss this.
That's right, and that's actually a perfect moment to move on to the Q&A. I think we're around about the right, more or less in the right time frame for this, because the democratization, as you said, and the inclusivity of online access means that people from all over the world who wouldn't be at the conference can ask questions. I haven't actually looked in the box, but I'm going to hand over to Nikki to put the questions perhaps to an individual. I'll have a look at the questions at the same time. So Nikki, over to you.
Okay, I think I'm going to deal with the most recent question first, just because it links quite nicely to what we were talking about before, what Mark was mentioning just now. And this is from Adashir, who is asking what happens to the social interaction. that takes place in conferences, perhaps those ones over coffee and around the conference dinner tables. How are we going to connect in these times of online interaction when perhaps we're missing that face-to-face? I think, you know, online conferences on the whole have been very successful and have their advantages. They've allowed a lot more people perhaps to attend than perhaps in-person events. However, there is definitely that aspect missing, you know, from these online events, the ability of people to go and perhaps pose questions in a side, you know, in a quieter environment where perhaps people aren't confident, you know, don't feel confident enough to ask it. So I don't know, maybe Mark, you wouldn't mind answering that one first?
Well, actually, I would hand over to Fiona, because I think Fiona has a very interesting perspective on this, because she started as an online organization and you've had to build that sense of community online from scratch.
Yes, thank you, Mark. And it's difficult. There's no easy answer. I think it's not going to be exactly the same, but there are some ways that we've worked at doing it. I mean, the forum has been excellent for making connections with people across the community. Also, I think there are various teams that I'm in various in different universities that are starting to grow, that are helping with a bit of connection there across institutions. And I think at our AGM last week, one of my colleagues, Svetlana, actually suggested the idea of a monthly coffee club, testing coffee club that we're setting up, which is a very informal drop-in that I'm setting up just on Blackboard Collaborate. So nobody's hosting that, nobody's leading it. It's just providing the platform for anybody to get together to talk about testing in an informal environment. It's not the same. And I'm sure as time goes on, we'll learn more and better ways. And Mark and Benjamin might have more experience of different platforms that are there. So we can kind of mimic it, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay.
If I could just add on to that, I would agree with that. And I think we will learn more on this because we have to, because this is such, I think one of the things that I've been talking about leading up to this panel with Linda, as well as the UKALTA president, I think COVID's given us kind of pause to think and reflect on what is really important for us. And I think a good part of that, or the answer for a lot of us, will also have been the relationships and the community. And so we have to work on that, particularly, I think, for or in the interest of emerging researchers, PhD, MA students who I think, yeah, in the absence of this kind of face-to-face mingling, are perhaps at a disadvantage there. But there are tools, and there will be more tools, and it won't be your LTF grade social or conference dinner, but it'll fill some aspects of that empty space, I think.
I could just add one tiny thing to that as well, which is, I think Benny's just touched on it there. It's extremely important. As BAAL TEASIG, we made a concerted effort this year to promote the work of masters and PhD students, of emerging researchers. What's missing from the face-to-face conferences is those opportunities to have those side conversations. But what we would like to see is more promotion of people emerging in research, so that they can be contacted by people perhaps with more experience or other ideas in the field. And it's extremely important to use the online platform to lift people up and give them a voice that they might not otherwise get from face-to-face conferences. And that includes internationally. When face-to-face conferences return, we should continue to do this, and we should continue to give emerging researchers a platform to say what's going on and what their ideas are and where they might be thinking of going.
As far as I understood you, there hasn't yet been an obvious impact on MA and PhD enrollments or work being done so far, and so it's difficult to say anything about that. That was one of the questions that was sent in to us. And just looking at the questions, Nikki, I don't know, there's a couple of questions about testing security. You probably had that in mind for the next.
Yes, I think There are several questions there about testing security, and I think obviously the panelists, it would be unfair on the panelists to ask them specific technical questions, but I think perhaps a broader issue that the panelists might like to say a few words about is perhaps we seem to be in a world that's rapidly changing, and it looks as though perhaps online testing is going to play a greater and greater role in the future. And maybe what can we do as organisations? It's obviously from the number of questions that were there about that suggests that that's a matter of quite great concern. Perhaps there's room for a new organisation related to specifically the security issues of online testing, but perhaps as organisations, what can we do to help, perhaps as much with not so much with the technical issues, but with the perceptions of security and online testing? Benjamin, you've unmuted, so I'm wondering whether you have something you'd like to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, and I've seen the questions in the Q&A box as well, but without getting too specific, I don't think it needs a new organization. I think the way we can address this is through increased collaboration, not just between organizations, but through individuals reaching out to representatives at organizations and sort of just more communication about what's needed maybe at the chalk phase, what's there in terms of advice from scholarly perspectives or other good practice examples, and just kind of use these forums that we already have, or within the organizations that we have, create new forums for that sort of exchange. I think that would be one suggestion. That basically members of individual organizations or members of other organizations reach out to representatives and say, okay, this is something that we would really appreciate. This is something where we could do with help. Can you put on an event? Do you have anybody with expertise that you can recommend? And I think that might be a way of addressing these issues that EAP teams are facing, that institutions abroad are facing. It might be a way of kind of mediating between the scholarly literature and the real life practical demands and issues that people are facing in these times, whether they're related to security or any other aspects of language assessment in this very moment.
Yeah, thank you, Ben, and thank you, Nikki. And I'm just keeping an eye on the time, because although Linda did say we could go over a little bit, I don't think anyone wants us to take over the whole break. But in fact, Ben, you've more or less fed very neatly into the final question, which was how could we collaborate? And I think as associations of researchers, teachers, testers, there's obviously an enormous overlap there, and so this might be the way forward for what did we call it? Yeah, joint association response to the crisis, is thinking in terms of the practical issues that testers and teachers who are having to set and run and administer tests are faced with. And I know there has been a lot of work. I'm not actively at a university anymore, but I was until very recently. Fortunately, have not been faced with this problem, but I know from colleagues that there have been many creative as well ways of dealing with it. And this might be something that a cross-association response could deal with, to have a sort of forum. And this would be, again, probably something.
Judith always freezes at the critical point.
Yeah.
If I could just jump in then, in that case, I'll fill the space. One thing I would say is, as a membership, what would be extremely advantageous from BAAL TEASIG's point of view, but I think from the point of view of the whole industry, would be if you think that an organization is interesting, and you think that more than one organization is interesting, join more than one organization. It's not necessarily at the organizational level that we need to collaborate. It's also individual members being part of other organizations. The cross-fertilization of ideas is really essential. And I would add that these organizations that we're representing today, and other organizations that could also be here, they're not run by elites, they're not run by people with incredible publishing records. They're increasingly open to all. And if you think that you could become involved in running one of these organizations, please join, please volunteer. As our activities have expanded to, we will be back to face-to-face, but we will continue our online presence. We're needing more and more human resources to run these events, and all ideas are welcome. And the more that you sit on different groups and different committees, the more that we can collaborate with each other and cross-fertilize our ideas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. I think you've spoken really for all of us there. That's an absolutely brilliant end to this. I see Linda's come back in to tell us to stop, but we do have one more little thing that we wanted to say, which was our final statement, and the task is?
That's in 2021, isn't it?
Yeah,
in 2020, yeah.
So Judith has sent us this final statement to complete, and it reads, in 2021, it will be nice too, and each of us are going to take turns to complete that sentence based on Linda's suggestion. And if I may start, in 2021, it would be very nice to, as Marcus said, move forward with the best of both worlds, like the digital and the face-to-face. And obviously gather in person in Lancaster in very good health, all of us, to celebrate 40 years of this marvelous community, and hopefully a lot more in a very bright and collaborative future, even beyond the organizations that are represented at this very panel.
Yeah, thank you. I suppose I froze again. I could hear everything. I'm sorry about that. We had Benjamin, then Mark. In 2021, it would be nice too.
Very much the same as Benny as well, in that it would be great to see a return to the face-to-face, but take forward the best that we've found out of this bizarre year that we've had. And I probably should add world peace and think of the children.
Yeah, thank you. And then Fiona?
Exactly the same as Mark and Benjamin have just said, you know, and put into practice what we've identified as the need today for these networks that go across institutions and across associations that are going to help us all.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Nikki?
Yeah, I think it would be nice in 2021, it would be nice to see loads more people applying to join the committees. Students, teachers, the wider the diversity and the bigger the range, the better.
Right, thank you very much. I'm going to say yes to all of those, and I think it would be nice to be able to meet you all face to face again, perhaps, and also to be able to see the audience that are there today, but we can't see them face to face at a face-to-face event, and that would be my wish. And I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panelists, to Nikki for dealing with the questions, to Linda for inviting us all and for asking me to chair this panel discussion. I think we've all enjoyed it, and I hope that the audience has enjoyed it just as much as we have. So enjoy the rest of the conference.
Judith, thank you so much for managing that and coordinating it. And I know there was quite a lot of work went in advance. So thank you to all of you who did that preparation and thought about those questions, and also the ones that came in this afternoon. Thank you for those who posed questions as well. I think I find it very encouraging that this cross-fertilization and this collaboration going forward is probably here to stay. And we have the technology now to support that. So it will be important for us, and I will commit UKALTA to looking forward into 2021 to see how we can build on that, capitalize on what we've already developed this year.